Throughout life, we all dream of that one true love, the kind that makes the world brighter, that gives our restless hearts a home. I believe I'd found it. Her laughter could turn my darkest days into light, and her presence felt like the only reason I was still breathing. But sometimes, life is cruel in ways we cannot imagine. Love isn't always stolen by another man. Sometimes, it's stolen by the very person you trusted most. I never thought my story would become one of betrayal so sharp, so unbearable, that it would change the course of my life forever. She loved me, but in the end, she chose my father, and this is how it happened. I grew up in a quiet town where everyone knew everyone's name. My father, Daniel, was a strong man, respected by many. He was the kind of man who carried his silence like armor. People looked at him with admiration, but I knew he had his scars too. My mother had passed away when I was barely 12, and from then on, it had just been the two of us. He worked endlessly to provide for me, and though he was strict, I knew his heart beat for me. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Sometimes I felt he judged me, compared me to his younger self. But still, he was my father, the man I wanted to make proud. Life was steady, almost dull, until I met her. Her name was Emily. She walked into my life on an ordinary day, but the way she looked at me, the way her smile seemed to bloom without effort, it felt extraordinary. Emily was different. She wasn't from town. She had moved recently, carrying with her a sense of mystery, like a story waiting to be told. I met her at the bookstore of all places. I had been searching for a second-hand copy of a novel I loved, and she was standing in the same aisle, holding the very book in her hands. She glanced at me, noticed my eyes locked on the book, and smiled. "You were looking for this too?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a warmth I hadn't known in years. I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, but I think it looks better in your hands." She tilted her head, studying me, and I swear, in that moment, the air shifted. That's how it started. Small conversations that turned into hours of talking. Coffee shared at the corner cafe. Walks under the fading orange glow of sunset. She was like spring after a long winter. Sudden, refreshing, impossible to resist. For the first time in years, I felt alive. The growth of love. Days turned into weeks, and soon Emily became a part of my everyday. My phone buzzed with her messages. My heart raced at the sound of her voice. She had a way of making me believe in things I had long buried. Dreams, hope, even happiness. She wasn't perfect, but that was what made her real. She had fears, insecurities, stories about her broken past. I listened, and in return, she listened to mine. It felt like we weren't just two people. We were two souls finding their way back home. But love has a way of testing us, doesn't it? Introducing her to my father. One evening, Emily insisted on meeting my father. "You talk about him so much," she said. "I want to know the man who raised you." I hesitated. My father was different. He wasn't the kind to smile easily or welcome strangers warmly. Still, I agreed. That night, Emily came over for dinner. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied back, her nervous smile lighting up the room. I introduced her, my voice proud, as though I had brought home the greatest treasure. My father looked at her, his eyes unreadable. He nodded, shook her hand, and then said, "You've chosen a difficult path, being with my son." I froze, embarrassed. Emily laughed it off, but something in my chest ached. The night went on. They spoke about books, about life, about struggles. To my surprise, Emily seemed genuinely intrigued by his words. My father, who often spoke in short, sharp sentences, opened up in ways I hadn't seen in years. She listened, her eyes shining with interest. And me? I sat there, watching, try to convince myself that it was just admiration. That's all it was. But deep down, a shadow had started forming. A subtle shift. Over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes. Emily brought up my father more often in conversations. She praised his wisdom, his strength, the way he carried himself. "He's been through so much," she would say. "It's inspiring." I forced a smile, but inside, unease spread like wildfire. Why did she talk about him this much? Why did her eyes light up when his name entered the room? I told myself I was overthinking. That love requires trust, but trust is fragile. And soon, I would learn just how easily it can shatter. Love is supposed to be simple. Two people choosing each other, holding on no matter what storms life brings. But love in my story was never simple. It came with whispers, shadows, and the slow tearing apart of everything I thought was safe. It started with small moments, things so ordinary that most people would never notice. But when you love someone, when you've built your entire heart around them, you notice everything. The uneasy shift. One evening, Emily and I sat in the park. The sky was painted with strokes of gold and purple, the kind of evening that begged for peace. I wanted to hold her hand, to talk about our future, about the places we'd go. But Emily's mind was elsewhere. She stared at the horizon, her eyes distant. When I asked her what she was thinking, she smiled faintly. "Your father," she whispered. The words cut deeper than I expected. "What about him?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. She shrugged. "He's strong, wise. When he talks, it's like the world slows down to listen." I nodded, trying to hide the storm rising in my chest. "Yeah, that's him." But my heart whispered another truth. "Why are you thinking about him when I'm sitting right here?" At home, days turned into nights, and Emily began visiting my house more often. At first, it felt good. I wanted her to be part of my life, my world. But slowly, I realized that she wasn't coming just for me. Sometimes, she'd find excuses to talk to my father. If I was in the kitchen making tea, I'd hear their voices in the living room, soft and almost secretive. When I walked in, the conversation would stop abruptly, replaced by an awkward silence. One afternoon, I walked in to find Emily helping my father fix a broken chair. She was kneeling on the floor, holding the leg steady as he hammered the nail back in place. Their laughter filled the room. I stood frozen at the doorway, watching a picture I didn't understand. "Hey," Emily said quickly when she saw me. "We were just fixing the chair," my father finished, his eyes meeting mine. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. But inside, jealousy burned like fire. The doubts. Love makes you blind. Or maybe it just makes you afraid of seeing the truth. I wanted to believe Emily loved me, that my father was just a figure of respect in her eyes. But the signs, they were everywhere. She started canceling plans with me. "I'm tired," she would say. Or, "Let's meet another day." But then I'd see her car parked outside my house when I wasn't supposed to be there. One night, I confronted her gently. Do you feel closer to my father than to me?" Her eyes widened, almost offended. "How can you even ask that? I love you." Her words soothed me for a while, but something in her tone, defensive, trembling, kept echoing in my mind. The dinner that changed everything. Then came the night that changed everything. Emily insisted we all have dinner together again. "I miss your father's stories," she said with a smile. I forced myself to agree. That evening, she arrived early. She helped set the table, her hands brushing against my father's as they arranged the plates. I watched them laugh, exchange glances, speak in a language I couldn't understand. During dinner, Emily barely looked at me. Her eyes stayed on him, her laughter blooming at his jokes. It was as if I had disappeared from the room. When the meal ended, my father stood up to leave. Emily's gaze followed him until he was out of sight. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't imagining it. Something was growing between them. The confrontation. That night, after Emily left, I went to my father. My chest was heavy with anger, pain, and confusion. "Dad," I said, my voice sharp, "what's going on between you and Emily?" He looked at me, his expression calm, almost too calm. "She's your girlfriend." "That's not what I asked." He sighed, sitting down. "You're young. Sometimes what you feel is love is just infatuation. Emily needs stability, wisdom." I cut him off. "Are you saying she needs you?" He didn't answer, and his silence was louder than any words could have been. Emily's tears. The next day, I confronted Emily. "Tell me the truth," I demanded. "Do you feel something for my father?" Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head at first, denying it. But then she whispered, "I don't know what's happening to me. He's different. He understands me in ways I can't explain." Her words shattered me. I grabbed her hands, desperate. "But I love you. Isn't that enough?" She sobbed, pulling away. Sometimes love isn't enough. The betrayal. From that moment on, everything changed. Emily became distant. My father, too, avoided my eyes. The house that once felt like home turned into a battlefield of unspoken words. One evening, I came home early from work. The lights in the living room were dim. And there they were, Emily and my father, sitting close, her hand resting on his. I froze. My world collapsed. They looked up, their faces guilty, shocked. Emily tried to speak, but I couldn't hear her. My ears roared with the sound of betrayal. I ran, out of the house, into the night, my heart tearing apart with every step. Broken. For days, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every smile. How could the woman I loved choose the man who raised me? How could my father betray me like this? Friends called, but I ignored them. Work suffered. My life felt like ashes in my hands. And worst of all, a cruel truth whispered in my mind. Maybe I was never enough. This was only the beginning of my downfall. The betrayal wasn't just love lost. It was trust shattered, family broken, and a wound that would never fully heal. I used to believe the worst pain in life was losing someone to death. But I was wrong. The worst pain is watching the person you love most choose someone else, especially when that someone else is your own father. The silence that spoke louder than words. After that night, the night I caught them sitting together, our house turned into a prison of silence. My father avoided me, staying out late, coming home with excuses. Emily barely called anymore. When she did, her voice carried a guilt that stabbed me deeper with every word. I felt invisible, erased from the love story I thought I was living. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Emily's apartment. My heart raced as I knocked on her door. When she opened it, her eyes widened with shock, then softened with guilt. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "I need answers," I said firmly. "I deserve the truth." She hesitated, then let me in. The room smelled of lavender, her favorite candle flickering in the corner. It felt like home once, but now, every corner screamed betrayal. The confession. She sat down, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Then why did it?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Because your father, he sees me. Not just the surface, not just the smiles. He sees the broken parts of me and doesn't turn away. With you, I feel love, but with him, I feel understood." Her words crushed me. I knelt in front of her, desperate. "But I've loved you with everything I have. Isn't that enough?" She shook her head, sobbing. "Sometimes love isn't about who loves harder. It's about who feels like home. And somehow, your father became that for me." The room spun around me. My worst fear was now reality. The breaking point. I stumbled out of her apartment, my vision blurred by tears. My legs carried me aimlessly through the streets until I found myself standing in front of my house. Inside, I could see the faint glow of the living room light. I pushed the door open. My father was there, sitting in his chair, a book in his hands. He looked up, his face unreadable. "We need to talk," I said, my voice breaking. He set the book down. "I know. What?" I asked, my words trembling with anger. "Why her? Out of everyone, why the one person I love?" He sighed deeply. "I never wanted this. But feelings, they don't always ask for permission." I slammed my fist against the table. "You're my father. You were supposed to protect me, not steal from me." His eyes hardened. "And you think love is something you can steal?" Emily made her choice. She chose me. That's not something I forced. His words hit me like a bullet. Emily didn't just fall for him. She chose him over me. The wedding announcement. Weeks passed in a blur of pain. I tried to move on, but the wound only deepened when I heard the news. Emily and my father were getting married. The announcement spread through our small town like wildfire. People whispered, judged, pitted. But nothing hurt more than seeing the invitation on the kitchen counter, my name written neatly, as if it was just another celebration. I wanted to tear it apart, to burn it. But instead, I held it in my trembling hands, my tears staining the paper. The wedding day, I told myself I wouldn't go, that I couldn't bear to see it. But on the day of the wedding, my feet betrayed me. I found myself standing outside the church, my heart pounding like a drum of war. Through the stained glass windows, I could see Emily in her white dress, radiant, breathtaking. The same Emily who once promised me forever. And beside her was my father. The music played, people cheered, vows were exchanged, and with every word, my heart shattered into smaller pieces. When they kissed, sealing their union, I turned away. The world blurred with tears. The collapse. I stumbled into the night, my chest burning, my soul screaming. How could love turn into this nightmare? How could life betray me so deeply? I walked until my legs gave out, collapsing on a bench by the river. The water shimmered under the moonlight, mocking my pain with its calmness. I thought of ending it all, of slipping into the water and letting it take me. What was left to live for when love itself had destroyed me? But then a thought stopped me. If I end it now, they win. My pain wins, and I can't let that happen. I broke down, sobbing into my hands, the night swallowing my cries. The turning point. That night, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't control who Emily loved. I couldn't control my father's choices, but I could control mine, and I chose to live. Not for them, not for what was lost, but for myself. Because sometimes survival is the loudest way of saying, you didn't destroy me. The climax of my story wasn't just their wedding. It was the moment I realized that love, no matter how deep, how painful, cannot define my worth. They were married now. The woman I once dreamed of spending my life with was now my stepmother. Even saying those words out loud felt like poison on my tongue. Living with the wound. In a small town, secrets don't stay secret for long. Everyone knew. Everyone whispered. When I walked down the street, I felt their stares digging into my back. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment, and a few with cruel amusement. That's the boy whose girlfriend married his father. I hated those words. They echoed in every corner of my mind, louder than any church bell, sharper than any knife. At home, the walls themselves felt heavier. My father and Emily lived under the same roof, and though they tried to keep their affection subtle in front of me, it was impossible to hide. A hand on his shoulder, a soft laugh, a glance that lasted too long. Every small touch was another wound, another reminder that I had lost them both. The distance between us. I try to stay out of the house as much as possible. I leave early in the morning and come back late at night, just to avoid seeing them together. But no matter how far I ran, the pain followed me. At work, I was distracted. My boss noticed, my coworkers whispered. My friends tried to pull me back into life, but I shut them out. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was humiliated. The two people I trusted most had chosen each other over me. The breaking of bonds. One night, I came home late. The living room light was still on, and I could hear their voices. I froze by the door, listening. Emily. He doesn't look at me the same anymore. I don't think he'll ever forgive us. My father, he doesn't have to. He'll understand one day. Understand? The words made my blood boil. How could I ever understand this? How could I ever forgive it? I pushed the door open, and they both looked at me, startled. My father's face hardened. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I'll never understand, I said coldly, and I'll never forgive. Then I walked upstairs, slamming the door behind me. That night, I packed a small bag. I couldn't live there anymore. I couldn't breathe in that house that reeked of betrayal. Alone, I rented a small, shabby apartment on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the heater barely worked, and the bed creaked every time I turned. But it was mine, and more importantly, it wasn't theirs. Still, loneliness was a heavy price to pay. Nights stretched into endless hours of silence. Sometimes, I'd stare at my phone, my fingers hovering over Emily's name, aching to call her, to hear her voice one last time. But I never did, because I knew if I heard her voice, I would break all over again. The spiral. Without them, I thought I'd feel free. Instead, I felt hollow. I stopped caring about work. My performance dropped, and eventually I lost my job. Bills piled up. The fridge emptied. Some nights, dinner was nothing more than stale bread and water. I started drinking, just enough to dull the pain, but never enough to silence it completely. Alcohol numbed me for a while, but the mornings brought sharper headaches and heavier regrets. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning, eyes bloodshot, cheeks hollow, and I barely recognized the man staring back at me. Who was I now? The man betrayed by his father? The fool who lost everything? Or just a ghost of who I used to be? The encounter. One afternoon, months later, I ran into them. I had gone to the grocery store, trying to hold on to some shred of normalcy. And there they were, Emily and my father, walking hand in hand down the aisle. She wore a soft smile, the same smile that once belonged to me. He looked content, his eyes softer than I had ever seen them. When she noticed me, her face paled. She let go of his hand, guilt washing over her features. My father, on the other hand, stood tall, his expression stern. "Hello, son," he said, as if nothing was wrong. I clenched my fists. "Don't call me that." Emily whispered, "I'm sorry," but her words only twisted the knife deeper. I left the store without buying anything. My chest felt like it was caving in, my legs trembling beneath me. It was one thing to imagine them together. It was another to see it with my own eyes. Hitting rock bottom. That night, I drank more than I ever had. The bottle became my only friend, the only thing that didn't judge me, didn't betray me. I stumbled out into the cold night, my vision blurry, my heart aching. I ended up by the river again, the same place I once thought of ending it all. This time, I leaned dangerously close to the edge, staring at the dark water below. One step, and the pain would end. But then I heard a voice inside me, faint but firm. If you end it now, their story wins. Yours doesn't even get told. I stepped back, collapsing to the ground, sobbing like a child. That was the night I realized I needed help. The start of healing. The next morning, with shaking hands, I called an old friend, Mark. He was the one person who had never turned his back on me, even when I pushed him away. When he answered, I broke down. For the first time, I told someone everything. Mark listened without judgment, his silence heavy but supportive. When I finished, he said softly, "You don't need to carry this alone anymore." Those words became the first crack of light in my darkness. Finding strength again, Mark introduced me to a therapist. At first, I resisted. Talking about my pain felt like reopening wounds I wanted to keep buried. But session by session, I learned to release the guilt, the shame, the endless why me. I started working odd jobs, slowly building a routine again. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I joined a small gym, pushing my anger into weights, turning my pain into sweat. The stronger my body grew, the stronger my mind felt. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. The realization. One day, sitting in that shabby apartment, I realized something profound. Emily and my father had chosen each other, and nothing I did could change that. But their choices didn't define me. I was more than their betrayal, more than the whispers of the town, more than the man who lost. I was still here. I had survived, and survival is its own kind of victory. The escalation of my story wasn't just about pain. It was about rebuilding, about realizing that even in the ashes of betrayal, life still offers sparks of hope. They say time heals everything, but I've learned that time doesn't heal. It only teaches you how to live with the scars. Facing the past. Months had passed since I left my father's house, since I last spoke to Emily. Life had become quieter. The storms in my heart still raged, but they weren't as wild as before. One afternoon, I received an invitation, not from them, but from the town itself. A community gathering. A chance for everyone to come together, share food, music, laughter. At first, I wanted to avoid it. I didn't want to see their faces, didn't want to face the whispers again. But something inside me whispered back, "You can't run forever." So I went. The hall buzzed with chatter, children running, old friends embracing. And there, at the far end of the room, I saw them. Emily and my father. Together. Married. Smiling. My chest tightened, but I didn't run. This time I stayed. When our eyes met, Emily's smile faltered. My father's gaze hardened, then softened, as if he, too, carried the weight of what happened. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt tired. The conversation. Later that evening, Emily approached me. Her voice trembled. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. Almost didn't I admit it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I never meant to hurt you." I nodded. "But you did." Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, and I'll carry that regret forever. My father joined us then, his presence heavy. He spoke slowly, carefully. You don't have to forgive us. I don't expect it, but I do hope one day you'll find peace. Because carrying this anger will destroy you, not us. I wanted to argue, to scream, to tell him he had no right to give me advice after what he had done. But instead, I took a deep breath. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm learning to let go. Their faces showed surprise, maybe even relief. But I wasn't saying it for them. I was saying it for me. Letting go. Walking home that night, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me. About setting myself free from the chains of bitterness. I may never forget what happened. I may never understand why it had to be this way. But I didn't need to carry the weight anymore. Love had broken me. Betrayal had scarred me. But survival had shaped me. Building a new future. With time, I built a new life. I found work that gave me purpose, not just a paycheck. I reconnected with friends, allowed laughter back into my days. And slowly, I opened my heart again, not to Emily, never to her, but to the possibility that love, real love, still existed somewhere out there. A love that wouldn't betray, a love that wouldn't break, a love that would choose me, and only me. The moral: my story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens after, about the choice we all face when life rips us apart. We can drown in bitterness, or we can rise from the ashes. I chose to rise, because at the end of the day, no one, not even the people who betray us, get to decide our worth. So, if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt like the world has taken everything from you, hear this. You are more than what they did to you. You are stronger than the pain they left behind. And your story isn't over yet. Don't let betrayal define you. Don't let heartbreak destroy you. Stand up, take back your life, and write the ending you deserve. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't anger. It's happiness. She loved me, but chose my father. But I chose myself, and that choice saved me.